Welcome to the AQA YouTube channel. To navigate through the video, you can select specific chapters or subjects of the video. Enjoy watching and remember to subscribe.
I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the land on which we work, and the land on which we play sport. Where I'm situated, it's the land of the Wurundjeri people. And I'd like to pay my respects to any First Nations people, their culture and traditions, pay particular respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and any First Nations people that are joining us today. Just a personal note of thanks to all the people that have joined us on the panel today for giving us our time. And I will now hand over to Nazurdin, who will be your MC for today.
Thanks very much, Sal, and thank you to everyone that's joining us. Hopefully, you're okay as we are doing this presentation, that we answer some questions as well. And you know, a lot of people out there, if you've got a question to ask, just type it in the Q&A section or the chat area there. At about an hour's time, we're going to open it up to people. So if they want to join us and speak face to face, we'll be able to do that as well. So I thought I would start off with a presentation just because a lot of people are interested in knowing more about us, what our journey is, if we went through rehab, you know, getting involved in the sport, what our expectations are towards Tokyo. And we've got Scott here with us as well, who's going to talk to us about pathways. So what I'll do now, I'll share my screen and quickly give people an intro to what we're going to be doing. So just let me know when you can see the screen. And
can see it, mate.
Yeah. All right. So welcome again to everyone. So this is meet and greet the athletes going to Tokyo 2020. And the games, of course, are from the 4th of August to the 5th of September. So I'm just trying to get this to cycle through. All right, so this is an opportunity for everyone out there to hear about each athlete's journey from rehab, how they got involved in their sport, their expectations towards the games. And we're going to hear about pathways to sports as well for those who aren't going to Tokyo, but you know, might be looking at getting involved in different sports down the track. Just wanted to start with letting people know that there's various other sports other than what we're going to be representing here with the panelists, but there's going to be 22 sports, and I'll just name them quickly. So you've got football, five-a-side, archery, badminton, goalball, athletics, canoeing. Sorry about that, I'm not sure what happened there. So canoeing, cycling, judo, rowing, equestrian, powerlifting, shooting, swimming, taekwondo, sitting volleyball, table tennis, triathlon, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair fencing, boccia, and wheelchair tennis. Hopefully I've covered them all. Did I miss any out? There were 22.
I think you missed my sport, mate. Mine, Shae's.
Oh, no, I've actually left the very best to last from my point of view. So here it is here, Wheelchair Rugby. So we've got two people, Josh and Shae, representing Wheelchair Rugby. And yeah, hopefully we'll learn more about the different sports and, you know, the different activities that the sports do as well, because it's not just track. I mean, there's different events in various different sports as well. So we've got Josh Hayes here, who's representing Wheelchair Rugby, Sam McIntosh, Wheelchair Track, which the proper name is Athletics, Stuart Tripp, Handcycling, Shae Graham, Wheelchair Rugby, Natalie Smith, Shooting, Yannick Blair, talking about basketball, Marty Dunn, talking about tennis, and Scott Nicholson. So Scott's from Paralympics Australia, and he's a pathways coordinator. So we'll hear from him just how people might want to get involved down the track. And questions and answers. So if people are happy to type in their questions, as we're talking, we will be answering those questions. So stop sharing. So again, welcome Josh, Shae, Natalie, Stu, Sam and Scott. And I think we'll get a couple of other guys joining us as we go. So just want to start. Josh, you're the first square on my screen. So give us a little bit about your sport of wheelchair rugby, how you got involved in it, because, this is something that we just don't say we want to play wheelchair rugby and go to the Paralympics. There's a lot of things that happened before that. So do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, so I guess one of the major things with it, mate, with Paralympic sport is, we need to have disability, and some are required. So mine was acquired. So I was involved in a car crash back in 2005. And that's when I first saw the sport of wheelchair rugby. And I was a bit of a bigger lad when I was 18, and I just loved the physicality of the sports. And I remember watching it at the Royal Talbot, and I was immediately drawn to it. And, I knew I wanted to be involved in some capacity, but probably didn't necessarily think I would be able to take it as far as I did. And I guess I'm pretty fortunate to that. But what else did you want me to speak on about that, Naz? Or should I throw to Shae to speak a bit further about it?
Thanks, Josh. So as we're talking, we'll talk about different areas as well, and there's going to be quite a few questions coming through as well. We'll stay on the topic of wheelchair rugby. So over to you, Shae. So a bit of an intro to you, how you got involved, because people will be quite interested in hearing your story as well.
So I was a backseat passenger in a car crash when I was 18 years old. I used to be really sporty before the car accident, but I kind of took the whole wheelchair spinal cord injury thing as a sign to go into retirement from sport. So I refused to play sport for over 9 years, and lost a bet to my brother, which meant that I had to go and give wheelchair rugby a go. Got in my chair down at the Talbot first night, and then just fell in love with the sport from there. So my first introduction to wheelchair rugby was actually when I was in hospital as well. I watched a documentary, Murder Ball, and thought it was a really scary sport where it looked like everyone was trying to kill each other. So I wanted nothing to do with it, nothing at all. That's why I had to lose a bet to get involved.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Shae. And a lot of people too, I mean, sports is not just about team sports too. There's lots of individual sports that people play as well. A lot of people are attracted to wheelchair rugby because it's crazy. It's just like just a little bit weird. People are trying to kill themselves and they're already in wheelchairs. But some of the individual sports, and Sam, over to you. So let's hear about your sport and how you got involved.
Yeah, I had my injury when I was 17. It was a BMX accident, doing some dirt jumps up in Coffs Harbour, just being a bit of a reckless teenager. I didn't really have any idea about parasport until I had my accident. I was initially introduced to wheelchair rugby when I was up at the Talbot. I think, like most of the people going through there, you get put in a group and you watch Murder Ball for the first time, and you kind of see this crazy world of parasport in front of your eyes for the first time. But I got into athletics when I was still in rehabilitation. I was on weekend break. I was on a family kind of holiday, a weekend break down in Lorne, and this lady ran across the street from me and introduced herself, and her son was a Paralympian, Richard Coleman, who does athletics. So she kind of nagged at me for several hours, and a few months later, she was calling my phone nonstop until I came into the athletics track and gave it a go. And I fell in love with it from then. Just that ability to push yourself nice and fast, and it's just you against yourself. It's pretty addicting. Kind of haven't really looked back since then.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of people get into sports because it brings out some excitement and all of that sort of stuff. And, just being independent in being what you're involved in, doesn't matter what sport it is, but being independent and good at what you do, I guess. Just wanted to go over to Stu now, Stuart, how you got involved, Stu. A lot of people as we'll see, found out or saw the sport while they were doing rehab. So let's hear from you how you found out about the sport and why you took it up, pretty much.
I was never an athlete. Like, I was never going to be an athlete. I remember I maxed out the car accident in '94, lost a leg, messed another leg up, and I went through Royal Talbot for rehab. And I had no interest in sport. Like, I thought, no, I'm not going to do sport because everyone else does sport. I'm going to do something else. So I went off to uni but I just had this building pressure in my head, and unbeknownst to me at the time, I was probably living in a really great state of denial, which is a wonderful state to live in, but you can't live in there forever. And it came to a crunch where I was suicidal, and I was pretty ready. There was probably only one more straw that was going to break the camel's back. And I went and saw a psychologist on the urging of my parents. And I remember the first meeting with him, talking to him, just telling him what was going on in my life then. I'd split with a girl, and I'd moved back to Traralgon, and I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day and drinking to excess, self-medicating. I was in a bad way and burst into tears. And I said, can you help me? And he said, come back and see me next week and we'll start. And I went back the next week, and he said, pretty much off the bat, the next session, he said, did you do any exercise? And I went, no, I don't. I'm not interested in exercise. And this is back in 2000, mind you, well before the public association between exercise, physical exercise, and mental well-being was out in the public eye. And so I went and I started swimming first, and that was that was the most accessible thing for me. I went from Traralgon, I drove to Churchill. I remember having a panic attack on the way, stopping the car, not knowing what was going on with me. And we got to the pool and just floated around and sort of tried to do a bit of swimming. And then I went on to, if he had said to me, listen, you've got to crawl over broken glass for 50 metres, I would have smashed a dozen bottles and crawled across it. Like, I was in a really bad way. And so I started swimming first, did that for about 3 years. And then a friend introduced me to cycling. And I remember the first day I got on a hand cycle and just went, how much just anger and aggression and just shit am I going to get out on these? Like, all I have to do is push the pedals. I mean, that's all I have to do. And then I went through I got a bike. I did a Murray to Moyne in the early days and met other people and in similar situations. And then I just went through the club system. Like, I started riding for St Kilda Cycling Club, went through the state championships, through the national championships, and got selected for my first team in 2010. So, and that's how I found my way into cycling. And it's, regardless of what I'm doing right now, I'd still be riding a bike because it's very much a part of my mental health program to exercise on a daily basis.
Very good, Stu. That's fantastic. I think we'll get into mental health a little bit more, but having a traumatic injury pretty much changes your life, So it's really important to find things that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be sport. You're talking about not being a sporty person, but fell into it because of other various reasons. So let's I'll go over to Natalie now. Natalie, and also I want to go back to you guys as well. Just talk about, is this going to be your first time at the Paralympic Games, or is it you've been before? And just thinking and talking about what your expectations are and what you think it's going to be like compared to before. So over to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Naz. Yeah, this will actually be my third games. So Rio was an interesting one. London before that was fantastic, and gosh, who knows what Tokyo is going to be like. I started shooting straight pretty much out of rehab, and I did that through a come and try. I watched the rugby, and we did basketball and tennis and a few other things, and I just found them pretty hard to do, pretty hard to adapt to. Shooting was a little bit more sedentary, but it was also a lot mentally challenging. So it turned out to be a really good sport for me. And yeah, I did come and try everything really until I found my niche. And yeah, I've been shooting since I had my accident in 2009, and I've been shooting since 2010. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic. You know, I mean, it's really important to, just like you did, know about different options, different sports out there, and give them a go. You know, I mean, you don't have to be an athlete to start something. You give it a go for fun, see how you're going to go, and if it interests you further, you develop as a better player, I guess. Now, I'll throw it over to Scott. Now, Scott's going to talk more about pathways to different sports. It's really important, you know, I mean, a lot of people think that to be a Paralympian, it just happens, you know, you've got to be in the know, or you've got to know the right person, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you start playing a sport because of different things, either to continue your rehabilitation or to get stronger and better at what you want to be doing. So you want to tell us a bit more about that, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And I think what highlights to me after hearing, you know, all of our Paralympians talk is that there are so many different pathways into parasport. Just like every athlete is different in the nature of their impairment or their motivations to get involved. Pathways within each sport are really different as well, and particularly when you factor in where you live, or you know, your age, and you know, whether you're working or your other life circumstances. Everyone's pathway is going to be really different. I guess I'm the lady running across the street to hopefully share information with people about how they can get involved and how to navigate their way through the pathway. So, ultimately, my role as a participation and pathways coordinator is helping individuals connect with parasport and navigate their way through what can be a really complicated pathway when you factor in 28 different sports and all those other things I mentioned before. So I guess a couple of the key things that I'm doing and probably short term around the games that we're really focusing on is we want people to reach out to us as Paralympics Australia, because we know access to information is one of the hardest things. And just not knowing what opportunities are out there is a big thing for a lot of people. And I'm sure a lot of the people on the session this afternoon have probably been interested, but not really known where to start. And if it's not through rehab, maybe once they're kind of, you know, in the community without that network, they find it really difficult to work out what their opportunities are. So I'll put a link in the chat in a second, but we just have a basic get involved section of our website where we really want to encourage people to reach out and send through an inquiry. And then, you know, depending on where you are, myself or one of our 5 participation and pathways coordinators will reach out and find out what it is we can do to help you. So my region covers off Victoria and Tasmania. So I know we've got a few Tasmanians on the call as well today. So you send through an inquiry, essentially I can help you work out what's next. And one of the other things we'll be doing, which is coming up and really exciting and we'll be promoting pretty heavily during the games, will be some multi-sport come and try events running through Victoria and Tasmania in September and October. So just like Natalie, you know, if you're working out which sport is for you, it gives you a chance to come and try out a few of the different para sports and, you know, meet the coaches, meet the athletes. We had Nars out at our event we ran in Melbourne in May, and we'll have different athletes from different sports there to connect with you all and talk about their experiences in the sport. So there's lots of opportunity, I guess, is the thing we want to reinforce to people. But we recognise as well that sometimes finding where to get started is the hardest part. And once you're involved, you know, really the world is your oyster. So if you reach out to us at PA, we can definitely help connect you with those opportunities. And, you know, obviously where to participate is one thing, but how does classification work and all those different things that are also conversations we can support. So, yeah, lots of
That's great. Good information, Scott. Thank you very much for that. I know we talked about mental health and all that sort of stuff, pathways. We've actually got like a quite a few people at the Royal Talbot joining us as well. You know, they would be interested in, you know, the last thing on their mind is getting involved in sport. You know, I mean, they just want their life to be normal again, either walking again or, you know, sort out their health issues. But I think it's really important to plant the seed for people, you know, once they think about their rehab, or even after they finish their rehab 2, 5, 10 years ago, that this is still an option as well. Want to go back to you, Josh. Now, I know we talked about trying different sports as well. This is going to be your 3rd Paralympic Games. But the funny thing is, you actually retired 3 years ago or something like that from wheelchair rugby after winning a couple of gold medals. You know, you thought you've been there, done that, try something else. And you did. You went to try a different sport. So can you tell us about that and how that led to where you are again now?
I guess just leading into that, if I can as well, Naz, to that point you mentioned that, you know, post-rehab, you know, I went back home to Camperdown for about 2 years and was just focusing on myself, my rehab, trying to get back as much function and independence as I could. And then I came back into the rugby. But, yeah, you know, and then which has led me to go to 2 Paralympics to this stage and looking forward to my 3rd one at Tokyo. And I guess, you know, a bit of a silver lining, COVID sort of brought this opportunity where I sort of went back to help out with the rugby boys and girls, and then this other opportunity arose to join the team. So I'm very grateful, and I'm looking really forward to the opportunity to joining Shae and the rest of the crew, heading over to Tokyo and hopefully replicating a very similar result, because it's never been done before, Naz. Back to back to back.
It's
So
never been
done. A mighty achievement if we can do it.
Oh, it'll be huge. It'll be huge for sure. Just wanted to, actually, no, I asked you what sport, you changed sports, didn't you, recently, and you've gone back to rugby?
Yeah, I was just having a bit of a go at track with Sam, which was good. So that was a really, I really enjoyed that experience as as an individual athlete. And I guess a different mental and a different accountability. You've only got yourself to keep yourself accountable. And it was just fun traveling and going to the different places. And the latest one when I was with Sam was over in Switzerland. And just, again, that's my favorite bit with the sports, apart from obviously being part of the team, is just the travel. Love seeing the world and, just broadening your horizons, Naz.
Great. Thanks, Josh. And a couple of questions are coming through. Natalie, I might ask you these, even though you might not be able to answer all of them, but someone's asking they're interested in fencing and boccia. So I know you said you tried quite a range of different sports. What information would you have on that? I mean, when you were looking for different sports to try out, did you Google, did you contact Paralympics Australia or Disability Sports and Recreation? So if someone was wanting to know more about fencing and boccia, what would be their first steps, do you think? And Scott, you might want to jump in here as well.
Yeah, most of the time, a lot of organisations, even like yourself, they organise come and try days. If they don't have a come and try day, even just sourcing out your local venue that does or runs those sports, usually people are more than happy to get you come down, have a go. Yeah, more than happy. And then you find out if it's something that if you're interested and you want to keep going, just talking to them really. And even then that would be probably a good time to contact Paralympics Australia and perhaps see where there's a pathway or what's the best way to continue. But everything you've got to start locally, you've got to start your local club and just work your way up and to where you want to go and set some goals and get some training in and just start. Honestly, it's just about getting started. Find anywhere you can, find anyone that'll help you. But you've just got to put yourself out there. And sometimes, you might get a couple of, oh no, we're not set up for wheelchair sports or whatever, but there'll be another club that is, and that's more than willing to give you a hand and get you on your path. Yeah.
And if anyone out there can't find information, just contact us, Paralympics Australia, DSR, or AQA Victoria. Sorry, Sam, did I just cut you off there?
I was just going to say that something to remember for everyone as well is Paralympics Australia. We are not just about supporting Paralympians. We want to help people get involved with parasport at a local level as well. So just like Natalie said, that there are some really great proactive clubs in your local region. It's just, as I said, you maybe don't know about them. So if you're not sure, you can absolutely reach out to us as well, because we want to connect people with sport at any level. We're not going to be put off if you say, I just want to participate recreationally or anything like that. We just want to get people active. Part of our vision is to use parasport to contribute to a more inclusive society. So like Natalie said, there are some clubs that are still learning, and we're hoping to bring them along so they are more inclusive and welcoming and more supportive and more accessible going forward. But we need lots of interested people to get involved with parasport to help us do that. So absolutely reach out to us or AQA or lots of organisations, and we can connect you with those local opportunities as well.
Beautiful. Naz, can I throw a question in there to Sam?
Yep, sure.
Yeah, just adding to that. So Sam, as you know, with all these sports starting out, and I know for myself, you can feel pretty lost when you start out in with your first chair or your first track chair or rugby chair, whatever it may be, because the biomechanics play a lot into that. And I'd love to just set expectations for those guys maybe coming through. Do you want to speak to maybe your journey of how many chairs you went through and just, I guess, that frustration early on?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I was explaining before, I was introduced through the mother of whose son was a Paralympian. So my first chair was actually one of his old chairs, which was really, really tight and was bruising my hips and was just really not perfect for my body shape at all. But that's the chair that kind of got me through that first little bit of just being introduced to the sport. It was probably close to maybe 8 to 10 months later when I was able to purchase my first chair for me. But even that first chair, my body was still adapting from after my injury. All my shapes and proportions were changing around, and I ended up swimming in that. It was just way too wide. I was having to chop the sides up full of foam. It probably, even now, I've been doing the sport for well over 10 years now, and my body is still changing, and we're still adjusting and fine-tuning chairs. It's just one of those things. You're never probably going to find the perfect chair with the perfect fit for your body. As you develop as an athlete, it's going to keep changing for your abilities. But yeah, it's something you just have to be patient with, especially when you do start a sport and you're learning the skills. If you try to find a chair straight away, it's like a custom chair, and spend a lot of money on it, you're going to find out pretty quickly, as I'm sure you can probably attest to, that it's not going to last for very long, and you're going to be finding problems with it pretty quickly. So be patient and learn the skills.
Well said.
Just on that too, Josh and Sam and everyone else out there, wheelchairs aren't cheap. They're super expensive. When we talk about hand cycles or athletic chairs, rugby chairs, we're talking well over $10,000 just for a chair. And if someone is looking at trying out a sport, they're not going to find $10,000 or $15,000. But just want to let you know that there are lots of chairs out there. If someone's interested, a lot of us guys would be more than happy to, we've got spare chairs, or we can point them in the right direction where they wouldn't have to worry about, paying for a chair to trial. They'd be able to even borrow one for a year or something like that if they needed to. Someone asked a question, is this open to foreigners? So I'm guessing they're talking about the Paralympic Games. If that's the question, yes, definitely it is. The Paralympic Games is open to every country in the world. I think there's 159 or 160 countries competing in these games. I could be wrong there, but I think that's what it was when I had a look last. Another question was, is this your first Paralympic Games? So let's go around and just quickly say if this is your first, second, third or fourth Paralympic Games. And we'll start with Natalie.
Yes, this is my third Paralympic Games.
Your third, did you say?
Third, yeah.
Oh, wow, excellent.
Yes, third. I did London, Rio, and now Tokyo.
Nice.
Yep.
How about you, Stu?
This is number 3.
Number 3 as well.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, hat trick, another hat trick coming up. And Sam, I know this is not your first.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a trend going here. This is number 3 for me too.
Wow, there you go, hat trick again. Josh, I think you mentioned it's going to be your third, is that right?
Correct, number 3.
What a coincidence that is. Let's go over to Shae. Don't say 3, Shae.
No, this is going to be my first.
First, nice.
Are you building this off the crescendo, Nas, for us to ask you how many you've gone to previously? Or
Well, look, this is not about me, but yeah, I'm happy to say I've been to 5. Won't be going to Tokyo, of course, but yeah, 5. I've been around for a while, and it's been fantastic. You know, I mean, all of us get so much out of this. You know, I mean, not just the success. We don't compete to win gold medals. That's a side effect, I think. You know, I mean, that's something to brag about, something to show off. It's all about being there, competing, meeting other people, and you know, improving your life, personal development. Everything is all about personal development.
exactly.
Yeah.
I might
So,
bring it back, Nas, if I can. To
Yeah.
Shae, given it's your first Paralympics, just for people at home there, wheelchair rugby is a mixed sport. So Shae plays, I guess, with a lot of males. I'm just wondering, how did you approach that initially? Did you find that intimidating? And how do you find it now playing with a majority of males?
No, I was never really intimidated. Growing up, I always played a lot of mixed sport and kind of always was one of the few or only females that was playing like soccer or touch football or rugby union. So it was kind of my normal. So when I went into it as one of the only girls playing, it was my normal, and I just slotted straight in and, you know, got on with it, learned how to play, made heaps of friends, annoyed all you guys until you befriended me.
Good. No, that's fantastic. A point, fun fact I just want to mention as well, wheelchair rugby is actually a mixed sport. You know, there's not a male team or a female team. I don't know, Natalie, if shooting is the same. You know, do you compete with males as well, or is it just females?
We actually have both. So we have mixed matches, and then we also have just male or just female matches, and
Okay.
just, yeah, on their own.
Well, what about with hand cycling, Stu?
We have, so there's male and female separate. So there's sort of like there's male, female, and there's track and road. So I only do road, whereas some of the other categories in cycling do both track and road together. So yeah, it's open to anybody. So
No, it's quite unique. I mean, a lot of people hear about sports, but there are a lot of different competitions in sport. You know, when we're talking about racing, you know, we're talking about 100-meter sprints and 400-meter sprints and 800-meter sprints. So it's not just one thing. So you may not be good at running a marathon, for example, but you'd be a great sprinter. So it's worthwhile to know that as well. One event, there's not just one event. Some sports have got multiple events in them as well. Got a question here. Are the Paralympics only for people with visible disability? Are some that live with invisible disability, ADHD, for example? Are they allowed to play? Now, yeah, sorry, I was going to go and answer that, but I'll let you guys answer that if you know the answer.
I'm going to defer to Scott. I have no idea.
I preemptively took myself off mute then. Yeah, ultimately there's a wide range of disability and impairment types that are classifiable or eligible for the Paralympic Games. The 3 main impairment types are physical impairment, which, you know, caters to the majority of sports at a Paralympic level. Half of the sports at the Paralympics, so out of the 28 sports, there are 14 that have pathways for people with vision impairment. And at the moment, there are only 3 sports that have a pathway for people with intellectual disability or impairment. So there is a wide range of disability impairment types that are classifiable. It is though sport to sport, it can be different. So wheelchair rugby, you know, classifiable for people with physical impairment, whereas goalball is only open to people with a classifiable vision impairment. So it does change sport to sport, and we do have a really good tool that great timing. It's ready for the games. It's just been made available on our website, and that's an impairment mapping tool. So you can go onto the PA website to that link that Sal just shared before, and you can answer a couple of basic questions about yourself, and that will give you an indication of different sports that you might be eligible for. So everyone's different, and each sport is different in the events that are offered at the Paralympic Games. But keep in mind as well, the Paralympics are one competition. Within each sport, there are lots of other opportunities and competitions as well, even if those impairment types don't have a pathway to the Paralympic Games. There's lots of other opportunities for people to get involved. So yeah, it's a really good question, really good question.
Yeah, definitely there is, you know, I mean, there's other competitions as well. I don't know them all, but, you know, they've got the Deaf Olympics, for example, they've got the Special Olympics as well. So there would definitely be a competition out there. I just don't know the answer to the ADHD question there. All right, so let's go on to funding and support available through NDIS. I mean, this is probably a specialised question, but if someone was to purchase equipment, would they be able to get it funded through TAC or NDIS, for example? Or do they, you know, has anyone had experience with doing a fundraiser, maybe?
I'll kick it off if you want, Naz. I know with TAC, they're pretty supportive with your recreational chairs or your sporting chairs. So I guess the process would be you'd have an OT come to an assessment, and then say with my rugby chair, it's definitely prudent to try, like you mentioned, Naz, asking people to try out their chairs, get some lived experience input, because as Sam sort of referred to early on, your first chair is never really going to be the best fit or the perfect setup. So it's a little bit of trial and error over time, but the initial starting point with TAC that I can speak to is an OT, you submit it, needs to be approved, and then it'd be set up. Shae, what's your experience been with NDIS?
I'm only really new to NDIS, so having been on the rugby team for the last like 2.5 years now, I think most of my chairs have been funded through obviously the Wheelchair Rugby program. Prior to that, I did a similar thing and borrowed like lots of other people's old chairs to try them out. And even like recently I borrowed Jason Lee's old chair to try out, like a picking chair. So yeah, I also DSR had a program where they I guess they kind of sponsored a chair for like an up and coming developing athlete. So they purchased a chair for me that was made kind of to fit me. And then when I moved on to Wheelchair Rugby and got a different rugby chair from them, that chair then went back into the system for someone else to try and use like in the future. So yeah, I haven't really had to go through the NDIS for like rugby equipment yet, but I assume it would be a similar thing to like the TAC. You'd just need reports to back up that this is something that's good for your physical and mental health, and as well as, you know, getting out and being a part of your community. So I assume it would be quite similar.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Because I have got my my newest rugby chair through NDIS, and they did fund that. But you have to have a bit of a track record. You know, I mean, if the piece of equipment is $10,000 and you've never been in, you know, a track chair, for example, they're not going to fund that. You know, they have to see if it really meets your goals. Josh, sorry, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was fascinated to hear from Natalie how she would get potentially a gun funded through the NDIS.
And yeah, actually, how expensive are guns too?
Well, if that's even possible.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You probably wouldn't be able to get a gun funded through NDIS, but depending on if you needed specific modifications. So our SH2 category has anyone who has hand impairment, and they may need modifications on their gun to be able to pull the trigger, or a custom table that fits to your chair. That would be funded, but the gun itself, yeah, wouldn't be funded because we just use standard guns.
Good, thanks very much. Got a question here from Duke. Now, I don't think it's directed at me. It's probably you, Sam. So the question is, being a senior, when do you expect to retire, or what will determine your retirement?
Hopefully I've still got a few years left before that becomes a problem.
I guess that's pretty much a general question, isn't it, to all of us? So, are we looking at doing another 4 games, or is a goal, just for these Paralympic Games and what we do after that?
Yeah. For me right now, my focus is on Tokyo, but it is hard not to think about the fact that Paris is only 3 years away now instead of the normal 4-year cycle. And I think a lot of athletes kind of have that, well, it's only 3 more years kind of mentality going on at the moment. For me, some of the people in my classification from other countries that I race against, they are, pushing 50. So I don't think there's necessarily an age limit. It's probably more what your body can handle. Yeah. And just what your interest is as well. Like Josh was saying when he wanted to try something else at the end of 2016, it's just, you need to be passionate about it to want to continue to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
I can trump you. I can trump you. One of our last shooter at the games, she was 70.
Oh.
70.
In Rio.
How's that? Welcome, Marty, everyone. Marty joined us. So we mentioned Marty before. He's actually just come from a training session from Wheelchair Tennis. So, Marty, we just went around and I might throw it to you if that's okay.
Yeah, that's sweet, mate. Hey, guys.
How you going? So, just it would be great if you talk to us about how you got involved in the sport. What led you to it? Was it just to go to the Paralympics, or was it something else?
No, so 5.5 years ago, I had my motorbike accident. I ended up at the Royal Talbot, as most of you or some of you might have. On Thursdays mornings at 11 o'clock, they had wheelchair tennis. Now, before I was in a wheelchair, never heard of the sport before. So some of you guys might know him. His name's Greg Crump. Just started having a hit with him. I got out of hospital. I wasn't really interested in playing wheelchair tennis at all. I was more interested in trying to get back on my feet. But eventually I gave in. I went down to Greg Crump at the National Tennis Centre. And 1 day a week turned into 2 days a week, turned into 5 days a week training, turned into me getting part of the National Academy. And then I went to national tournaments, international tournaments, worked my ranking up high enough to qualify for Tokyo. Whew. Sorry, guys, I'm a little bit exhausted at the moment. Just came out of the heat chamber at the VIS.
And this is your first game, second or third? Yes. Third's been really popular.
Sorry?
Third's been really popular with the other guys.
No, my first one.
Okay, so first. So you're with Shae.
Okay.
First Paralympic Games, nice. Got a question. Thanks for that, Marty. Question from Sean, who wants to know, Natalie. So, if you are a quad, for example, and you've got no finger movement, can you compete in shooting, and how do you pull that trigger?
Yeah. Being a quad, as long as you can move your arms, not your hands, you don't need hands. The SH2 category means you can have a stand the rifle rests on, and what we have is come out from the side of the trigger. So as long as you can move your hand back and forth, you can pull the trigger.
No, nice. Thank you for that. Just having a look if there's any other questions. Someone asked, when do we leave? Oh, sorry, didn't mean we. When do you guys?
I can probably
leave?
follow on from that question, Naz, while you're looking through the questions, if you like. Maybe just throw to you, Stu. Let's, if we all speak through maybe some of the categories. I understand with wheelchair rugby, it's predominantly quad sport or 4 limbs impacted or impaired. Stu, can you just speak through some of the categories that are involved with the hand cycling?
So in hand cycling, it's broken down into 5 categories, H1 through to 5. So the higher the number, the less impairment. The lower the number, the more impairment. So they talk in terms of your physical functionality. So H1 would be close to a quad. So to put it in, I guess, in chair terms, a H1 would be bordering someone who would just be in a manual chair, but could be in an electric chair as well. And then as you go through up through H2, H3, H4, H5, it all depends on how much trunk function you have. Until you get to a H5 like me, who can walk, but can't ride a bike safely.
Yeah.
Normal bike safely. So you can't clip pedals in and do all the stuff that you need to do to race at that level. And that's why when we're in the H5 categories in a kneeling type of bike, as opposed to the previous 4 categories that are all in layback bikes, because that because they haven't got the trunk function's not there to hold them up, hold the rider upright. Whereas I've got trunk function, so I can use that. So it's sort of along the classification premise that if you've got it, you've got to use it.
Yeah. No, nice. And Sam, same question to you, mate. What are the classifications with the track?
So there's 6 classifications for wheelchair track. There's 2 cerebral palsy classifications, and then there are classically called the spinal cord classifications, but they're open to a lot of different people now, which is they're T51s, which would be for people with kind of pretty much limited to no hand function, and depending on who's classifying them, you're not supposed to have triceps. T52, which is what I'm in. So I've got limited wrist function, but full shoulder function. 53s are pretty much paraplegics, but with no trunk function. And then 54, which is the highest classification. So that's for people with full upper body and full trunk and a little bit of leg movement. So amputees can race in that classification, as well as kind of high level or low level, paraplegics.
Cool. And Shae, did you want to speak through the wheelchair rugby ones?
Sure. So we've got classifications ranging from a 0.5 up into a 3.5. So 0.5s would be your high level injuries. And then from there, obviously goes up. 3.5s the ones with the most function. You often find that a lot of the time they would be like your quad amps. So yeah. Oh, and then if you're a female, you get a 0.5 deduction, or your team gets to play with an extra 0.5, whichever way you want to look at it. But yeah, 0.5 to a 3.5 for us.
Yeah. Feel free to jump in, Naz. I'll go to you, Marty. My understanding is there's quad and para, just the 2 classes.
Yeah, Josh, that's correct. So the para division is called the open division, and pretty much if you got how it used to be, if you had a missing.
Marty, you just muted yourself, Marty.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, they just chucked you in that division, and the quad division, it goes off a point system. So it goes off your playing arm, your non-playing arm, and your core. And if you go up to 10 points, so you got to stay under 10 points. And if you stay under 10 points, then you're considered a quad. No, yeah, that's it really.
Is that similar with the shooting, Natalie, just the 2 classes?
For rifle and pistol, we just have 2 classes, but we have modifications in those classes. So backrest height, depending on how much function you have within those case classes. Have shotgun, which I think has head, which I'm not sure how many categories are in that one yet, but they haven't. They'll be in upcoming Olympics. They're not in the current ones. They're just looking for future ones.
Nice.
So they're all at World Cup level and things now, but not Olympic level.
Someone just on the shooting, Natalie, someone asked before, with shooting, do you have, is it target shooting or is it the clay shooting? Is there different events like that?
Yeah, currently the only events in the Olympics and Paralympics are, well, sorry, only in the Paralympics are target shooting. That's air rifle and 50-meter rifle, the 22s, but vision impaired and which is air rifle and clay target shooting. They are both up to World Cup level now, and they're looking to be, I'm not sure if they're coming into Paris, but definitely, if not Paris, the ones after. They have to get a certain number of countries, and they are very close to having them all now, and they're held at almost all the World Cups as well.
No, excellent. Thanks for that. Just going through some other questions. Someone asked about early on, to play wheelchair rugby, do you have to have a disability? The answer is to play Paralympic sports, definitely you have to have a disability, but to play wheelchair rugby or some of the other sports as well, they have lots of social competitions as well. So there's grassroots levels where you don't have to have a disability to get involved. Again, if you want to know more about that, just contact AQA or DSR or Basketball Victoria.
Just on the back of that, it might be worthwhile for everyone to understand classification and how it applies to different levels as well, because quite often people hear classification, or we've just talked about all the different classes in the sports, and it can be quite overwhelming and think, oh, that sounds really complicated. Essentially, when you're just starting out, you don't need to be classified, as Naz said, like for social competitions and things like that. It's often a case where you just rock up and play. But if you're really interested in understanding what sport your impairment might be most suited to, you can get what's called a provisional classification, where that just gives you an indication of what class you might fall in. And you do that by getting some forms from the sport, and then you just meet with your physio, and the physio will do some kind of functional tests, because the classification for physical impairment is all functional relative to the sport. So you do some tests with your physio, they complete that paperwork, and then you can send that off to the sport, and they can give you an idea if you're a hand cyclist, whether you'd be H1 or H3 or H5, and that starts to give you an idea of what your opportunities might be. It's not until you're really disabled at state or national level where you'd need to get a formal classification done face to face. So it's just a good one to remind people that it does seem overwhelming, but to get started, it's not necessarily a barrier for you.
No, great, thank you for that.
There's a question there, Naz, I saw, that's probably pretty relevant for Shae. It's from Sean. They're wondering about, with the contact sport, how do you actually stay in your chair? Did you want to speak to some of the, I guess, the dynamics of the rugby chair?
I mean, sometimes you don't. So we have casters at the back of our chair. So they're designed to kind of keep us upright. And we're strapped into the chairs. So if we fall, we kind of fall with the chair, and someone will run on the court and come pick us up. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add, Josh?
No, you covered it pretty well. Yeah, you're very much strapped in, and we're pretty lucky to have mechanics. So when a tyre gets popped, the wheel pretty much comes off, and then there's another one that goes on. So it's a pretty quick pit stop. Sorry, Naz, just interrupted there.
No, not at all. Just while you were chatting at that, I mean, I was just looking through some other photos. The wheelchairs are actually built not like day chairs. They're very stable. They've got cambered wheels, which many people will notice as well, just so they don't tip over sideways frontways or backwards. You know, the caster wheels, they're set further in front in the wheelchairs. And like Shae mentioned, you've got tippers at the back or anti-tippers where you can lean back as much as you want and the risk of tipping out backwards is pretty low. Just while I'm chatting, I'm just trying to find out examples, but hopefully people get an understanding of what I mean. If not, if they ask a question again, I'll try to answer that.
I've got another one now. Now about people falling out. Now, you know, it might be just myself, but I'm really interested in the speeds. So, Stu, I might start with you, mate. What sort of speeds do you get up on that bike clocking up to?
Down a hill, I start to get a bit nervous about 72 k's an hour.
Yeah.
That starts to get me a little bit jumpy. But to give an example, in Rio, it was a 20k time trial on what I class the flat, wind-affected, semi-technical course. So there was a few corners you had to go around, but it was essentially, I was on the beach, and I averaged 41.7 k's for 20 k's.
Yeah, bloody hell, that's pretty good.
Now, so yeah, you get up there, moves along.
Yeah. Now, Sam, if I put the same question to you, mate, your pen event is 100 metres. So what speeds are you getting up to towards the end there, by the end of the 100 metres?
For a good and successful 100 metres, crossing the finish line at about just under 29 k's an hour for me. But I know some of the T54s, they cross the finish line at close to 36 k's an hour. So you're moving when you're going, yeah, you're going into that bend pretty quick for some of your races. Can be a bit hairy. Quite a lot of people they kind of hit the corner and flip over sideways. So you really got
to
keep that center of gravity low.
Yeah. Can you expand on that when you go around the corners? How do you actually navigate that?
Yeah. So the wheelchair track racing chairs, they have what's called a compensator at the bottom of the chair. So your steering's either permanently set going straight for going down the straight and the back straight, or permanently set for the corner when you hit the bend. So it means you can keep pushing with two hands. You just tap the compensator either to the bend or to the straight, and you can just put your head down and keep pushing with two arms.
Mm-hmm.
Just thank you to everyone from Stephanie. Just made a note there. This is a great informative session. Thank you to all the panel sharing their experiences, opening my eyes to a hell of a lot of more potential for the future. So thank you. And that's great to hear, you know, people that haven't got a lot of background or information about the different sports, you know, that we're sharing that with them.
I'll stay on the speed, Nars, while you're looking through the questions. Marty, when you're serving, what can you clock that ball at? Do they have the speed guns out there?
Yeah, sometimes. I think my personal best is around 120, 115, 120 Ks. I think Dylan Alcott's is about 130, but there's some guys that can get up to 150, 160. They can really hammer it. So I think
that's not too bad. Not too far off a lot of the able-bodies, I guess, in some aspects.
Oh, yeah. 100%. There's some guys out there, they just hammer it, and you know, within the top 10 players in the world, they when you watch them play, it's almost like watching an able-bodied tennis. How quick they move, how hard they hit the ball, everything. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
Anything else?
Here, no, Natalie mentioned. Well, she probably wasn't the oldest athlete at the Paralympic Games. A 70-odd-year-old shooter, Natalie, you mentioned, but the question is, what is the youngest Australian Paralympian this year? Any ideas?
Pass.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is this year, but I know in previous games there has been some 15 and 16-year-olds.
I think
I'll tell you a story about Rio. I grew up in Traralgon, and I was there for the just 2 or 3 days after the birth of one of my mates' daughters. They had triplets, and I saw the girls, 3 girls, like a week after they were born. They were on McDonald House, and I went down. I was in Melbourne, and I called in to say good day, and 2016, Emily, the youngest, the youngest of the triplets, was in Rio with me. She's a swimmer, and she's also going to Tokyo as well. So I saw her, you know, a week, 2 weeks old, and now we're still catching up with each other now at Paralympic Games. So I think she was probably 14 or 15 years old when she went to Rio.
I think there might be another swimmer who's 15 at these games, Isabella Vincent from South Australia. And Isabella went to nationals, I think, earlier this year, just for the experience, essentially. She just started with the South Australian Institute of Sport last year. So it was really just about her getting some experience at the national levels. And I think she surprised herself more than anyone that she beat the qualifying times for Tokyo. So all of a sudden she went from, you know, going and competing at nationals just to get the experience, and next thing having to explain to mum and dad that she'd qualified for Tokyo without even meaning to. So I think that just highlights some of the parasport pathways. You know, you can end up in very exciting places pretty quickly.
No, for sure. Got a question here from Dave. So again, he said, awesome panel and great conversation. It's a long road to get to compete at the Paralympic Games. How do you maintain your motivation to train and stay at peak performance for competition? Someone else actually asked about how often is your training regimen. So do we want to answer that one?
I'll have a crack. So you're not always at peak performance. You can't be. It's impossible to be always at peak performance. So essentially what I do is we'll keep a base level, keep a very good base level, and then as we move into competition, whether it be a World Cup or World Championship or Paralympic Games, you'll start winding up to it, you know, 8-10 weeks out, you'll start getting more progressive with your training. But I think I answered another question that was asked, something about how do you keep motivated. I don't know about anyone else, but my motivation is not to go. It's not the games is not it's not a motivator. I think racing for me is a motivator, but also just the fact that I love riding my bike and I know what it does for me is my biggest motivator. And finally, on to another question about are you thinking about Paris? And I'm going to keep riding my bike for as long as I can, and if I'm worthy enough to keep going to games, then I'll keep going. It's the cycling that does it for me, not so much and racing and competing, not so much the events, the individual events. So
yeah, so I guess I was just going to say, so the motivation is pretty much continuing because you enjoy it. You know, and it doesn't matter for you, Stu, if it's a Paralympics or just going out for Sunday ride. I'm sure it does, but you know, not to the level where you know, you're going to drop everything because you want to go to the Paralympic Games. Now, question around, you know, your body. You know, you mentioned you'll keep going as long as you pretty much can, but how do you manage like injuries and stuff like that, or how do you deal with injuries? Because pretty tough on your body, isn't it? I mean, a lot of us guys probably train 6 days a week. That's a lot of load for your body. So how do you manage that?
I think most of us have a pretty good support team around us that we've built up over the years. And I know during lockdown, the last 12 months has been quite challenging for a lot of people, and likewise for athletes. I had my first massage up here in Brisbane in 12 months. So I was doing all my physio via telehealth, and we managed to work out all the kinks and things we need to do during that. So that support network that we have as athletes is like gold. Like you can't I don't think any of us would be here by ourselves. No one makes it by themselves. So you need support behind that person. We're very lucky in the cycling team in particular. We have a huge support system that gets us to where we are now. To the point where the only thing I have to think about when I get on the bike is how hard I've got to turn the handles. I've got someone who writes the program for me. I've got someone who tells me, gives me advice on dietary requirements. I've got someone to work out the kinks, in my shoulders or my arms or wherever I've got kinks. I've got, it's quite amazing, really, when you get to that, when you get into that system.
Oh, very good. Stella in the background has been doing some research. Got Isabella Vincent and Jasmine Greenwood, both swimmers that are 14 years old. Thanks for that, Sal. Karen James asked about quarantine. So things have changed quite a lot. To the guys that are going to their third Olympics, they would have experienced, what it's like, because you don't just go there, compete, and go back home again. You've got other things like the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, interacting with other athletes from different countries, supporting other sports. So how do you think that's going to be different this time around? You guys, someone actually asked about, when do you fly out? I know everyone doesn't fly out together. And when do you fly back? I think the answer is as soon as your event's finished, I think. Over to, I'll go to Shae with that. Shae, when are you flying over to Tokyo? And
we leave on Wednesday. As of tomorrow, we go into like a lockdown isolation type training camp. We have a few of the guys from Brisbane flying in, so we'll have a training camp for a few days and fly out on Wednesday. And then I think at the moment we're supposed to come home on the 2nd of September, and then straight into hotel quarantine.
What about you, Marty? As an example, not all sports happen at the same time. It's a 2-week event. Some sports start off on the first day, some finish on the last day. So, do you know what your schedule is when you're flying over and when you're heading back?
Yeah, so on Sunday, I fly up to Sydney, doing a week training camp in Sydney because Ben Weeks, don't know if you guys know him or not, he lives there and he's not allowed to come to Melbourne, but I'm allowed to go to Sydney. So I'll be going there. And then on the next Friday, I'll be getting on a chartered flight to go to Tokyo. And then I believe we come home around the 3rd or 4th of September as well. Whenever our event finishes, we'll be getting sent home.
So does that mean anyone here, do you know if you're going to be attending the opening or closing ceremonies, or you'll find out once you get there what's happening?
No. The closing ceremonies and no one from, only the flag bearers will be going for the Paralympic team.
I guess that's a big part of it as well. I know, being part of all those events is just with the interaction and being part of the game as well. It's been really important in the past, but I'm sure the Paralympics Australia will put things in place where, people do mix with other things that are going on, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to be really curious to see what it's like having been to 2 games in the past where everything's completely open and we can go to the opening and closing, and we really get that chance to intermingle with other sports on the Australian team as well. You really get that sense of kind of community bonding as the whole Australian team. You kind of become a big family of all these sports together instead of your separate sports kind of dotted around throughout the year, regularly training. So it's going to be really curious to see how that sense of community and family is going to feel differently to previous games. It's going to be really interesting getting the opinion from people like Shae and Marty going to their first games, not getting that experience of an opening, and kind of seeing how they feel part of the community and part of the mob, as we call it in the Paralympics.
No, that's right. That's a great point, Sam. A lot of you guys that have been there before sort of took part in the atmosphere. It's just like, I was going to say like Southland Shopping Centre, where it's just chaos everywhere, and the Paralympics were a little bit like that, because you do have your shopping centre, your international zone there. Everyone's got their own apartments. The dining hall is massive where, you know, you've got like 20, 30 different menu items you can choose from, and it's open 24 hours a day. Now that's going to be completely different. So meeting and interacting with other people is completely going to be different. But yeah, it'd be great to see what it's going to be like this time around, especially for Shae and Marty. Highlights. Let's go on to highlights. Talk about Bling. What's everyone thinking about? You know, expectations, and what have they? How successful have they been in the past as well with their events? I want to start with you, Natalie. What are you expecting for in Tokyo as in your results, and what's been the highlight for you in the past?
Well, the highlight was definitely winning a bronze medal in London. My highlight this year, or this time, was going to be my first opening ceremony, because I've never been to one. So I was so disappointed that COVID's put a stop to it. Honestly, I like we all goals of winning gold. Like that's that. But as times are just so uncertain and we haven't been to competitions, who knows? Just going out and going, I tried my best and did what I could. And wherever that leads me this time around, that's going to have to be what I'm happy with. Yeah. You don't know what everyone else is doing, where they're at now. You can't gauge. Yeah, especially in an individual sport, you sort of can't gauge where you're at compared to other people because, yeah, it's been so long since we've seen anyone.
It's disrupted everyone's training, hasn't it? You know, everyone would have been competing in international events, seeing what the other teams are like and seeing where they're at compared to them. But this time around, I think it's going to be a lot different in trying to gauge where you're at compared to the opposition. How about you, Stuart? What's been your highlights over the years, and what are you looking forward to when you go to Tokyo this time?
Certainly. I mean, just making a team was a highlight for me. Like that was good. Obviously, the silver medal in Rio was something that was special. I won. This is. Probably, and then I was winning I only won my first race in 2018. So I'd been riding bike for 8 years and losing, like lose. It wasn't 2018 I won my first race. So you got to do it for more than just medals. You know, or you just won't survive. And but I've always entered my competition mode with just doing the best that I can possibly. I've been the best I can possibly be myself, and that's all you can do. You can only be the best that you can be, and if that's good enough, then that's good enough. If it's not good enough, then it's not good enough. I mean, that's the way the cookie crumbles. And like Natalie was saying, it's such a unknown field this year because you don't know how anyone else is going or how. You know, I haven't raced these boys for 2 years. So I don't know where, and you can't really judge on results from competitions. Like we had a World Cup this year and we had a World Championship this year. We didn't attend them. You can't really judge where everyone else is at through that because it's the course and you know the conditions are like and all that sort of stuff. So it's really, it's pretty open book this time. We'll see how we go.
No, definitely. Well, no, not just international competition, but training camps. I know the rugby guys. They've had camps set that they were going to sort of catch up as a team, and they've been cancelled because of COVID restrictions. You know, some of the New South Wales players couldn't come to Melbourne, vice versa, and even that local stuff, you know, has been disrupted. But the good thing is, you know, there's some great people in the management, and they've been able to hopefully work things together where people train as a group as much as possible. Because usually the teams and everyone is going away at least once a month, aren't they, to either play or train as a team. Marty, over to you with that question. So what's been your highlight? I know this is your first games coming up, but yeah, what's been your highlights over the last couple of years, and what are you looking forward to at Tokyo?
My highlight was a couple of years ago when I beat an ex-gold medalist, a gold medalist that won it 20 years ago. It was the hottest day in Belgium. I think it was like 38 degrees. The match went for over 3 hours, and I was just getting in his head, just telling him how beautiful this weather is and how Australian it feels. And he was losing the plot a bit, but yeah, ended up winning on the day. And yeah, that was by far my highlight. My expectation to go into Tokyo, I don't have any. I'm not really trying to think of it. I'm just going through the process at the moment, just doing what I have to do. Just go over there again, train, hang out with the team, and then hopefully afterwards, once I've competed, then I'm going to start, indulging in the feelings and emotions of it all, and hopefully I can look back and say I gave it a red hot crack. Because while the Olympics was on, I was sitting back and watching an event. I can't remember what one it was, but an Australian was just about to get up, and I was getting excited for her and like, yes, she's going to do it. And then all the emotions started coming up, thinking, oh man, that could be me in a couple of weeks. And yeah, I got nervous. I got anxious. I had to turn the TV off. I was like, no, I can't. I just got to go into the Paralympics like it's just another tennis tournament. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say for that question.
That's great. Thanks very much, Marty. Sam, over to you. So what's been your highlights over the years, and what do you expect, or what do you want to get out of Tokyo? We've mentioned it's about medals, but it's also not about medals as well.
Yeah, I've had a lot of highlights over my career. I think the biggest one for me was still making my first Paralympic team back in 2012. I was coming off refracturing my neck 9 months earlier. So I kind of rushed my way through hospital and a neck fusion again and made it back onto the team somehow. So just making it onto that team for me always stands out as like a massive achievement for me. Rio, I finished 4th. So that's my best result at the Paralympics. So hopefully my goal this year is to finish at least one better, hopefully, and make it onto the podium with a bit of hardware. But kind of like what Marty was saying, if I can leave Tokyo knowing that I've given it my absolute everything, regardless of the results, it's hard not to be satisfied.
Great. Thanks, Sam, for that. Shae, over to you. So, what's been your highlights so far, and what are you looking forward to in Tokyo?
I think the highlight for me is making my first Paralympic team, obviously.
Actually, I just got to say, you're the first female as well playing for Australia. So, congrats on that as well.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm going to be the first female to represent Australia playing wheelchair rugby at a Paralympic Games, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I guess like expectations, I'm not really sure what to expect, but I have like absolute faith in the team and our ability to go over there and put on a really good show and compete. So hopefully we'll be bringing home another gold. But if not, we're going to have heaps of fun and we're going to show them what we've got while we're there anyway.
Fantastic. Thanks, Shae. And Josh?
It's hard, mate. Everyone's had a really good response. Like, I want to pick it, little bits all of it, but definitely I think my highlight was, the first games. That was awesome. And, been the third one now, just looking forward to the whole experience. And I guess, the opportunity that arose to get to this point for the Tokyo one. And, just keen to do it. And I'm glad I've got the secret weapon in Shae hanging across there. She'll bring the damage. I love it.
Yeah. No, you're right. Thanks, Josh. But everyone's done as much preparation as they can, can't they? I mean, you've got things in place to be the best you can when you get there, and that's really important. I know Marty mentioned a lot of mental. You use your mental powers against the opposition as well. I think that's really important, that people work out. Sam, I know it's probably the same with you. You're probably staring down the other races and just trying to show them or let them know that you're ready for this, you know, and hopefully they're not when it comes down to it. Yeah.
There's always that stare off when you're in the call room, also looking into each other's eyes.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit of mental games, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it does. It makes a massive difference. And Stu, you'd be the same with that, you know, checking out their equipment and saying maybe.
Oh yeah, when everyone likes to do a bit of peacocking on the practice day. I just let them go. I'm like, I don't need to. If I've got anything to show, I'll show it on a day. So
that's it.
Yeah, you know, bit of trash talk and the road races on.
Yeah.
Keep them going.
Yeah, it's always part of sport, isn't it? Well, what about you, Natalie? How do you get ready for competitions, you know, and just try to get that extra boost, you know? I guess a lot of us guys would know the opposition pretty well, you know. We know how good they are, where their weaknesses are, and you try to, take advantage of that, don't you? So how do you do that, Natalie, if you do at all?
No, I don't do that.
Or something like that?
No, we don't tend to do that. Because it's like the person might be like 20 bays down from you who you want to beat. So it's really hard to influence them in any way. So the biggest and best thing is just to shoot your match to the best of your ability, and then you can't tell what anybody else on the line is doing. So, you just do the best that you can, and hopefully that takes you into a good enough spot and until you're in the final, and then we just let our guns do the talking, really. Yeah. We're pretty good friends, actually, off field, everyone, so... Yeah. No real cycling or rivalries or anything. Nah.
Okay. Just having a look at some other questions. There's actually a couple of comments for me. Is there a possibility of Naz making a late comeback? No, there isn't. And someone else, Tanya, said, congratulations, everyone. Good luck in Tokyo. Going to miss not seeing you again, Naz. Any chance of a comeback? Josh, I'll give you my neighbour's your phone or something like that. I won't read all of that, but I think that's probably an in joke there somewhere. But it's going to be great, I think, watching the sports as well. One of the questions was, is it going to be televised? And I know Channel 7 is backing it, 7 Plus as well as Channel 7, which is fantastic, you know. Is that what you guys know about it as well? Is there any other channels going to be following it, like Foxtel, for example? Or
I think if everyone's on the 7 Plus app as well, even if it's not on TV at the time, you'll be able to kind of watch a lot of the events back. And probably the other one as well, just for everyone, make sure you follow the Paralympics Australia social media accounts, because they've got a huge cohort of people covering all the different events in Tokyo. So the Paralympics Australia Instagram and Facebook, and obviously website, there'll be a lot of great news stories and things like that as the games progress. So on top of the 7 Plus, I'd say that the PA socials as well would be a good place to follow.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. You know, it's all going to be on the TV, the news, the newspapers. So it's fantastic that the media is backing it, and you know, you guys are going to have the whole nation following and cheering you on. So just wanted to thank everyone. Hopefully we answered as many questions as we could. Again, want to thank everyone for joining in today, and good luck, you know, good luck representing Australia, and all the best from me, Sal, Royal Talbot, AQA, DSR, Paralympics Australia, and all of Australia. Good luck guys, and hopefully everything goes well.